Okay, so this is the last video covering the statistics review PowerPoint, and I want to revisit this which kind of test decision tree. So we've gone through all these tests at this point. Good job. So like I said at the beginning, the first thing that you need to do whenever you're trying to answer a business question with a data set, you need to ask what kind of variables do you have? Are they at least ordinal? Are they quantitative variables? If so, you're going to move to the left here. If you simply want to know if two quantitative variables are related, you're going to do a correlation. If you want to test whether one quantitative variable predicts another, you're going to go here. You're going to do either a simple linear regression with one predictor or a multiple regression with multiple predictors. Now, if both of your variables are categorical, nominal, you're going to do the chi-square test of independence. If your independent variable is nominal or categorical and your dependent variable you can calculate an average of, so it has to be quantitative, you're going to be over here in this area. You want to know whether the significant mean differences across groups, whether there are significant mean differences across groups. If you have only two groups and your groups include different people, places, or things, you're doing an independent t-test. If your groups include the same people, places, or things just at time point 1 versus 2, you're going to do the dependent t-test. If you have more than two groups, you're going to do an ANOVA. But keep in mind, go back to those regression videos. You can use dummy codes and other approaches to put everything in one regression. So really all of these can be achieved with regression. So when it comes to the projects, I want you to keep that in mind, that if you're not sure what to do, there's probably a way to do it with a regression. Now I'm going to skip to these examples at the end. In these examples, I give you a business scenario and a brief description of the data that you have, and I want you to tell me what are your variables, what are your independent variables and dependent variables, what type of data are they, and what statistical test could you use to determine, to answer the business question. So here's example 1. We have 4 to go through. 2 years ago, all employees in your company went through a training program designed to improve their performance. You want to know if the training worked. You have annual performance data of all employees the year before and the year after the training. The performance data is rated on a scale of 1 through 5 provided by employees' managers. Take a minute, think through this, possibly pause this video and think through it, and then resume the video to get the answers. So here, our independent variable would be the training program participation before versus after. The dependent variable would be their performance rating, which is on the scale of 1 to 5. The type of test that we would do here, since this is a before and after analysis on the same group of people, we would do a dependent t-test. Now, your independent variable, that was training, before training versus after training, that would be considered nominal. Your dependent variable, which is on that scale of 1 to 5, you could consider that interval level data. Example 2. You want to know if employees in certain departments within your organization are more stressed out than those in other departments. You want to compare their stress levels of employees in the departments of sales, marketing, human resources, and finance. Stress levels were self-rated by the employees on a 5-point scale. So what are your variables? Your independent variable is department. It is nominal data. Your dependent variable is stress level. That would be considered interval. You could maybe also say ordinal, just depending on what the response options of that 5-point scale were. So interval or ordinal would work as a correct answer there. The best test that I would say to do here, a regression, once again, you can dummy code your 4 departments and do a regression, a multiple regression, or you could do an ANOVA. Example 3. You want to know if employee engagement predicts whether employees plan to leave the organization within the next year. You have recent survey data that captured employees' intention to leave the organization, rated on a 5-point scale from 1, no intention at all, to 5, high intention. The survey also captured the following engagement-related constructs using questions answered on a 5-point scale, which were job commitment, satisfaction with manager, career development opportunities, and energy. So here, our independent variable would be engagement. Now you can look at this in one of 2 ways. You can just say engagement, or you could say the engagement related constructs: job commitment, satisfaction with manager, career development opportunities, and energy. So it kind of depends on how you want to look at it, how, precise do you want to be. All of those, since answered on a 5-point scale, like the previous example, ordinal or interval level data, I think you could argue for either one of those. Your dependent variable would be whether employees plan to leave the organization. And that's on that 1 to 5-point scale, no intention at all to high intention. If the employees were given those text options to answer those survey questions, I would probably say the correct answer is ordinal level data, but I would accept interval level as a correct answer as well. Now, what statistical test? It depends on how nitpicky you want to get with this engagement construct. You could average all of those engagement ratings and just call that variable engagement and do a simple linear regression. Or you could have 4 columns that are all, for the engagement related constructs: job commitment, satisfaction with manager, etc. You'd have 4 independent variables. So in that case, that would be a multiple regression. Example 4, you want to know if employees hired from within the organization, so internal hires, are more likely to stay at your organization than employees who are hired from outside of the organization, external hires. You have data on whether each employee that worked at your organization for the past 10 years was an internal or external hire. You also have the termination date for all employees who left the organization over the past 10 years. So what are your variables? So if you want to know the relationship between internal versus external hire and whether or not someone stayed, you could have those 2 columns, 2 nominal variables: internal versus external, stayed versus left. So those are both nominal. You don't really have an independent variable and a dependent variable. You're just looking at the relationship. So you would do a chi-square test of independence there. Now, another thing that you could do, though, you could look at how long the employees stayed at the organization. So since you have their termination date, what's their termination date minus their start date? How many days were they employed? And compare those averages for internal hires versus external hires. So that would be a t-test, an independent t-test. So in that case, the independent variable would be internal versus external hire, which is nominal. The dependent variable would be, tenure at the organization, which is ratio level data. I do have these few sources in the back of these slides with, this is where I got a lot of the information in these slides. And if you need more information on these tests, you can see those sources.